Hi, so this is a little bit different than my usual interviews for the magazine because I actually have a real live person here with me instead of talking to somebody in a different part of the world. So this is my friend Faddah, who many people had referred me to when I first arrived here as a chiropractor who also does some muscle testing work. And so for this issue where we are talking about structure and the importance of structure, I thought who better to bring into the office on a day when we were exchanging sessions anyway, and to be able to talk about what he does and how it works and why it's important. So can we start by you just giving everybody a little bit of your history, what your training is and what your experience is with muscle testing? And
Sure. Well, I mean, if we go all the way back to the beginning, I was actually a baseball player who went to college to play baseball, and after a while, I tore up my shoulder throwing that ball around too much as a pitcher, and initially it was a lot of medication, anti-inflammatories, a couple of shots here and there to get myself going again, and every time I returned to the field, within a matter of a few weeks, same type of thing started happening, and I got frustrated. So I actually walked into the medical library at my university and studied shoulders. I just started reading about shoulders. I looked at some of the sports related orthopedic studies and stuff like that, and I started to deviate from what they were doing and strengthening my body in different ways, and looking at the relationship with the cervical spine and so forth. And at that moment, I just started realizing, like, wow, I'm really fascinated by this. This is really interesting. And so I was, at that time, my major was in physical education and exercise physiology. And I continued that, but then I added the second major of human biology and the pre-med program. And I was going to become a sports physician. That was my goal at that point. And along the way, there was one day, there was a kind of like a career day, a lot of different medical schools recruiting, and there was one chiropractic college that came out, which was kind of local from where that school was. And I had never heard that term before. I didn't even know what it was. And I went to that table and I picked up a couple of little pamphlets. I looked at this book and I opened this book up, and there was a philosophy behind chiropractic. And something just resonated at that moment. And I looked at it, I pondered it, I thought about it for a few days, and finally one day I just called my dad. I told my dad, "Dad, I'm not going to medical school. I'm going to go to chiropractic school." And he says, "Okay, but what is that?" And I basically said, "I have no idea, but it just feels right."
Okay.
So that's kind of how it started. So, I went through, I have my degree in exercise physiology, got the degree in human biology, got the doctorate in chiropractic. And all it really was to get a license or a certificate saying I can have a license. And then after that, that's when the education really started. Now, I did go to another 2-year postgraduate work to become a certified chiropractic sports physician, because that was in my consciousness at that time. And it was about human performance. How do we get the body to function and perform at its optimum? And so that's pretty much where my focus was at that moment in time. And then as I started to get into my private practice, I had families coming in. And at that time, there were a lot of different type of questions. Moms would ask about their children, what can we do about these allergies, or what can we do about this, or I have an issue with bedwetting. And so that's opened up a whole different type of paradigm for me at that point. And then, so that's when the studies really started happening about how does the body work and what can we do to create better function. Because really, for me, at that time and even to now, it's about if there's proper function, everything's working the way it's supposed to, then we have this thing called health, because that's by design. If that body's working the way it's supposed to, then we have health. That's how I was created, right? That's how it happened. So it led to so many different types of techniques, and so really what it was is that in chiropractic college, you learn how to manipulate. I don't want to call it adjustment, because adjustment to me is you analyze something to make a correction. Manipulation is to release a joint or improve range of motion. Mm-hmm. So it's a little bit different to me. So the key to me as a chiropractor was, are we analyzing the body to find out what it needs, or are we just forcing something to change?
Right.
And so for me, at least, as my philosophy is, and it's, again, in every profession, there's many types of thoughts and doctors, and everybody does it a little bit differently. And chiropractic, is a kind of an art form. It's not just, like a modality to correct something. There's a philosophy behind it. And so when you look at it from that perspective, to me, the most important thing is the analysis and not so much the doing. So if we can figure out a way to figure out the body, then all of a sudden things start opening up in a lot of different ways. And so I went through the 100-hour course in AK, Applied Kinesiology, to help me figure out what is going on in the body. And so in the earlier part of my career, I did a lot of muscle testing to figure out, okay, what segment do I need to adjust? What organ's not functioning at its optimum, and so forth. And so we looked at a lot of the energy fields. And so that started it. And as I started doing that, more and more people were coming into my office. And I was a solo practitioner. When we first started, my wife was the back office person. I had one part-time high school student running my front desk, and I was just taking care of people.
And that was in California?
This is in Washington State.
In Washington,
yeah.
Okay.
So all my education was in California, and the day that I graduated, in April 13th, 1991, I was out of there, and we had picked Washington as our home. So I started actually as a independent contractor in someone else's office for a couple of years. Learned some more things. I mean, really, everything along the path, every time there was a time for growth, someone came into my life to guide me in that direction.
Yeah.
And, the person, place, or thing, it doesn't really matter. If you're open, then things will show up. And so that's where I started learning a lot more about some of the wisdom of the body. And so, in the basic part of chiropractic, the philosophy behind it is that we have an intelligence, a wisdom to this body. And the term that's used in our profession is innate intelligence. So we're not here to cure anybody of anything, and we're not trying to remove something out of the body. It's basically, let's release any kind of interference to that communication system, whether it's the nervous system, which is the primary part of chiropractic. But over years, I have learned that there's a lot of different type of communication systems, whether it's in the fascia or in the astral body around us. We're always looking to remove interference, because if you can remove the interference, the body knows what to do. We just need to kind of give it a little, nudge here and there. And then if we can balance that out with the proper nutrition coming in and the proper type of movement into the body and work on some of the thinking patterns, then we can make some nice changes, and people start to naturally take care of themselves and heal from the inside out. And so part of it is not so much that we need to take things or cut something out. It's just more about, let's see if we can get everything functioning. Because if we get the function going, the body takes care of itself. That's how we look at it.
Yeah, I mean, I think that complements what I do so well, because in SIP's work, we're doing the same kind of thing. It's really just going, the body is electrical. If you can remove the resistance out of the electrical circuit, suddenly the power is there to do whatever it needs to do, right? So it's a different approach on a different level of, if we're thinking about our triangle, working with the energy as opposed to working with the structure, but it does the same thing in the end, right?
That does. In a chiropractic, the adjustment is the mode of correction, especially when it comes to the nervous system. And so, when we look at, if you really think about how does the brain communicate with the body, and it comes to the central nervous system, and then the spinal nerves and peripheral nerves and so forth send out that communication. So there is a relationship with thought to physical, thought to some of the autonomic nervous system and how the organs and systems function. So again, it's just, for me, again, going back, the analysis was the most important thing. That's not taught in chiropractic colleges. It's just the do, okay, oh, you can do motion palpation. Oh yeah, this joint's not working too well. Okay, let's move it. But what does that do? What are we trying to accomplish? Okay, just better movement. Okay, so in sports, that was important. That was like, okay, let's get everything moving correctly. Let's get the body functioning on that physical level as much as possible. But a lot of, as the years went on, a lot of the realization came out that, wow, it's on an energetic field first, and then it gets into the physical. And so what if we can change some of that? What if, again, we get the analysis. So one of the primary forms of analysis that I learned that really resonated with me was something called network spinal analysis. And it's basically a touch. I mean, you're doing a touch. In AK, we learned therapy localization, touch, touch, touch.
Mm-hmm.
So as my practice grew, and as usually the mother comes into the office first.
Yes.
You know? And so they get the adjustments, they get the work, they start seeing some things happening. And then next thing, okay, let's get the kids in. Okay, so now the kids started coming in. And finally the husband comes in. Okay, now we got the family coming in. So all of a sudden I'm seeing 80 to 100 people a day. And it's really challenging to take care of that many people on a day-to-day basis. And I remember, I had to keep expanding. I had to expand my office. We doubled the size. I had 4 adjusting tables in the room. And I would just go from table to table. I would check, make an adjustment, let them breathe on there, go to the next table, do the same thing. So I would just kind of do a rotation around everything. And I still remember to this day, I mean, my teenage chiropractic assistant would come to me, Dr. Kais, we got to go faster. Come on, there's people waiting. And so I'm thinking to myself, what am I going to do? How am I going to do this? And I'm muscle testing and then doing the adjustment and going to the next day, muscle testing and doing it. And finally, I remember this day, and it's so clearly in my mind. And I said, okay, I got to figure this out. I can see how many people are waiting, and I got these people here. And I went to think. I just thought, okay, I got to check that atlas. And as soon as I thought it, I saw the change in the body. Mm-hmm. And that's where the first aha moment of my professional life came, and says, whoa, what just happened right there? And I got to figure, what is this? How did this happen? And so then I started just to play around with it and test it. So I would think it, and then I would muscle test it and correlate it. And just, whoa, this is fantastic. So that's kind of how I started going into went away from the physical muscle testing to more of the energetic muscle testing. And I know that I'm talking to the body around the matter. I'm talking to that area. We're having a conversation. I can ask a question and I get an answer. And all of a sudden it changed a lot of things. And I was able to get into a different level of service. And and the practice kept growing. And so I started bringing other doctors to come help me, because there's no way I was going to do it by myself. And so that's kind of how and this is the east side of Seattle. And this is, that's where I spent 18 years of my practice life in my office there. And eventually, at the height of my career, I got this inner voice saying, you need to leave. And I moved to Costa Rica. And so now I get to meet nice people here and take care of them. But my heart is still with those people in Seattle. I grew up with them. I saw little ones grow up to be teenagers. I saw teenagers become adults, get married, bring little ones in. And so that was a heartbreaking moment. And I still feel it inside, but I know I made the right move coming into Costa Rica, setting up here.
All right. Well, to take it back a moment, I mean, we were talking about structure, and it's interesting because structure on one level is the foundation of everything, but on the other level, I mean, again, it's are we looking from the inside out or the outside in? On another level, it's the last step, right? As in, I have to move through all of your energetic layers before I touch you physically.
Right.
So this whole issue is really about structure, because I know for myself and so many people in my field, we work a lot more in the energetic realm. Sometimes we do a lot with meridians and chakras and auric fields, and sometimes we forget about the power of physically doing something. So is there anything that you want to say to kind of speak to that, about the reason why you're focusing on structure, even though you have the knowledge of working with the other systems?
Exactly. And again, for me, it's, I know what my purpose is, I guess you can call it. I can work, and then there's chiropractors who just work in that energetic field, and that's how they're doing it. I feel like for me, and I really had to look into that and say, okay, what is the best thing I can do for the people I take care of?
Mm-hmm.
And I know we can get, we can take care of some of that energetic part of it, and they won't even know it actually. Because most of the people coming to see me want that physical release or change. So a lot of times I will do things to start the ball moving on the energetic layers of the body. We have this matter that has a certain frequency of vibration, and we can feel it, we can touch it, we can sense it. So we have this thing, we have this part of the nervous system, the sensory system. We experience and express, and our experience is through feeling things and smelling things and seeing things and so forth. So I really do believe there is a part of healing that needs to have touch. And so since chiropractic is, the Greek word is by hand, my hands go on people. And I know that they know it, that I know that they know that they can feel what's happening and the change that happens. Sometimes when I do some of the subtle stuff, they don't understand or they don't get that as much. There are people who have an awareness of things, and so you don't have to do as much physical. You can do a lot of other stuff. You can release the meridians. You can get the electrical system going. But my forte and my skill set led me into that physical part of it, and I really believe that touch is so important for people to heal, and they need to be. We've seen in the last few months how isolation has created problems in people. We need to have that connection. We need to have that touch. There are people coming to my office right now who have not been touched in a long time, and they are just so grateful and say, oh my gosh, I didn't realize how much I needed that. And so that's why, we talk about the endorphins in the body and the connections with some of the hormones that are released through massage and manipulations, touching, and so forth. So that's kind of, for me, is a very important area. My analysis is more on an energetic level. My treatment is more on the physical level.
All right.
And so that way we complement each other.
Okay, so chiropractic, there are some people that have just a block even against the word, right?
Yeah.
I mean, as the same with my field, I mean, there's some people who will say quack right off the bat, and there's other people who have, an experience where somebody did an adjustment badly and hurt them or something. Are there any major misconceptions about your field and your work that you would clear up if you had a platform too?
I know. And again, it's just, a lot of different things, obviously I've heard a lot of different things over the years. And, before I did work on anybody, there would always be a consultation. And I would ask these kind of questions. Do you have any concerns or thoughts and of what it is? And do you have an understanding of what we do? And most of the time it's, all right, so this isn't going to cause a stroke, is it?
Right.
So that was number one usually that I would hear. And I said, no. And I would ask, like, where do you get that idea from? Well, I read this article or this doctor said this. And to me, I mean, obviously I've been doing this 26 years now, and nothing like that has ever happened. But I also know that there has to be a little educational thought put into things. There are certain people that you have in your office, and you're not going to do a manual type of an adjustment on those people.
Right.
If you're going to do the same thing, and this is where sometimes I get a little frustrated with our profession too, is that there are chiropractors who don't really do an analysis of a person. They'll do a couple of orthopedic exams, but the adjustment is the same thing every single time, and it's just creating another pattern over time. So that's where the word manipulation comes in, and that's where some problems can happen. But there are some people who are very susceptible to having injury. So if you go to a hairdresser and you lay your head over the bowl to get your hair washed, sometimes that's going to create something like that too. So as far as a neurological insult, like a blood vessel or something that causes hypoxia to the brain, that's extremely rare. But we have to be aware of that. We have to know that That's a possibility. And if you're going to have any suspicious of that happening, you've got to do an analysis of that and see if this is the appropriate way. For some people, you don't do things like that. Some people you touch very lightly. Some people you just barely touch. Some people you're just going to stretch a little bit. It just depends on that person. The second misconception that I like to clear out with people is, once you see a chiropractor, no, you don't have to go the rest of your life. You have the choice to do that if you want.
3 times a week for the next 2 months, and then twice a week for the 3 months after. Yeah, I've been quoted that by many chiropractors in the past.
So some people are going to require some intensive care. It just depends on where they are in their life and what's going on in their bodies. If they're in a pattern of high stress and repetitive, maybe computer work every single day, 8 hours a day, they're sitting most of the day, 10 to 12 hours. To change a pattern, you got to have spaced repetition. If a person comes in and they're in a relatively good shape, I guess you can call, and their body alignment is not too bad, but there's some correction needs to take place, then you don't need to do all that intensive stuff. You can kind of space it out over time. And then there's people who maybe they've gone through this, or they have pretty much a well disposition. They do a lot of different things, and they've taken care of themselves nutritionally and exercise-wise and movement and thoughts and all that. Then the word was maintenance. I actually call it more proactive type of care. You periodically get checked, make sure you're in alignment. See, what I look for is any kind of interference before any symptoms even show up. So let's take care of it before it gets to that point. So some people will choose to make this a lifestyle choice. Some people utilize chiropractic as a treatment for a specific condition. And then there's some people in between somewhere. So I always wanted to tell people, you know what? This is your choice. It's your body. It's your choice. So decide how you want to use it. If you want to come in when you're not feeling too well, I'll do my best for you. If you want to make this part of your lifestyle, I'm here for you. So that's how it is. But it doesn't mean that, oh my gosh, I'm going to get addicted to this.
Or that your body, I mean, ideally, once your body finds a state of alignment and balance, it goes there more easily, right? And it doesn't go out of balance as easily and as quickly.
Now, if you're going to eat a lot of fast food or junk foods and you're not going to be active in your life, you're going to require a lot more work, and not just chiropractic, but a lot. I mean, whatever the choice is, you can call osteopathy or massage therapy or whatever. I don't care. You're going to need more work. But if you're actually aware of your body and you're taking care of yourself, not as much.
Okay, so I mean, I do believe that what we take into our body nutritionally and chemically, of course, is going to influence our structure. But what you just said there is not intuitive for a lot of people, that eating fast food is going to create a physical misalignment. So how do you explain that to people?
Well, there's, again, food is chemistry.
Building blocks?
It's building blocks. It's what, if you're putting, okay, let's say that you're eating something, some kind of nutrients. I mean, I don't want to call them nutrients sometimes, but
plastics, neurotoxins.
You're putting toxins in your body. Okay, so how does the body react to toxicity? It goes into almost like a protection. Your immune system has to work harder. Your body has to get those things away from your organs, and so there's a lot of different physical things that start happening. You might get more blood sugars going or circulating in your body. Your blood pressure might go higher. Your heart rate might be higher. You might have some neurotoxins going into the brain, and so that's going to alter some of the brain chemistry. Those are all physical type of things. Over time, if we don't release that or get that cleaned out, then your body is going to experience some type of disease process. And so instead of saying, hey, we got to treat that disease or disease, let's see what we can do to balance. So one of the philosophies that we had in my practice was that we're going to correct nutritional deficiencies and clear out toxicities. If we get that in balance, then there's a better chance of this person having a nice quality life.
All right, so then just to finish up our conversation here, are there any resources that you would recommend for people, like somebody at home who's not going to go to university to study chiropractic at this point in time, but maybe is curious to learn more or learn more about the philosophy of it?
There's references, obviously my education was in the United States, so there are, various different organizations, the American Chiropractic Association and the National Chiropractic Association. You go into those websites, you're going to see a lot of references. reading materials, and they can start looking at it and researching. Going on an internet search, you might get a lot of different things. Who knows what you're going to see there? You know, there's a lot of censorship and biases and so forth. And you know, chiropractic was one of those professions that was targeted by the American Medical Association. That was one of the professions that they went after hard. And during 1930s, 40s, 50s, and 60s, many chiropractors were arrested and put into jail for practicing medicine without a license. So until, was it 1972, when the Supreme Court finally slapped the AMA's hand and says, don't do that anymore, that was basically what was happening. So now, unfortunately, the infiltration of the medical model is going into chiropractic colleges. And so, you know, even when I was in school, I basically went through a pre-med program in the chiropractic in the college. And so we had only two differences. At the end, medical doctors learn about minor surgery and pharmacology. Chiropractors learn about adjustments and nutrition. But everything else was pretty much the same. Unfortunately, a lot of chiropractors coming out of school now are using it to treat conditions instead of looking at the human body and saying, let's get this in balance, remove interferences, and let this thing work the way it's supposed to. So it's tough. It's getting there. So the references out there, you're going to see a lot of different things. And I have a friend who I went to college with in New Mexico. In New Mexico, because he says there's a shortage of medical doctors. Now chiropractors are injecting people and prescribing medications and stuff like that. See, that's the practice of medicine. That should not be a practice of chiropractic, in my opinion. And so, you know, that's what I'm seeing. So references, yeah, there are things you can learn. You can look at some books, go to the associations, and you'll probably get a little bit better material there.
Awesome.
Okay.
So thank you for coming over this morning, for fixing my atlas, which was seriously jammed from teaching online the last week and spending those 10-hour days sitting in that chair looking at this screen. So I'm really glad that we had a chance to do that, but also thanks for chatting with us.